So, welcome to Plain and Safe, and thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me. So, I have Sonia here and we're doing. I met you, woo,
It's been a
over
while.
over 6 years ago. And it's been, yeah, actually a little bit longer because I met you before I had that one. So, I've known you for quite some time,
Yep.
and interesting enough, I met you through a reference online, and so I was looking for family photos, and a
Mhm.
friend recommended you. And at the time when I met you, you were working out of your house.
Yes.
And now, years later, here we are sitting in your own studio, storefront studio, and you've just been doing really well despite um, other people not doing so well. So I was
Yeah.
really intrigued to interview you because you definitely didn't play it safe in your industry. And I think it's really
Mhm.
important for people to hear your story and how you continue, um, perseverance in this time.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit about how you even got into photography.
Oh my gosh. I started photography just as an elective in high school. I was a junior in high school. It was the year 1999, so now you know how old I am. I did 2 years of that, and then it was all film based back then. Maybe a couple years later, Canon had come out with like their first official professional digital camera, and I picked up one of those and just kind of worked with it ever since. And I should say I didn't pick up this camera. I'd known it was there, but I had already met my future husband at that time. Well, he's my husband now, but we
Yeah.
weren't married back then. And he didn't know anything about my past experience with cameras. He didn't know that I had done photography in high school. He just bought me that camera, and I'm like, "How did you know?" And we just kind of went off with that. So I learned this camera. I was photographing landscapes, and it was okay. It was really nice, but it wasn't as fulfilling as what I do now.
So what made you start the idea of going from landscape to actually, let's take pictures of
Of
families or weddings or people?
people, yeah, I was searching for something that had a deeper meaning, something that could be more rewarding. And I never had pictures as a kid, like my school pictures. That was it. And we were poor back then. I would never bought every picture that we bought from school. We didn't have a family picture. Nothing official was ever taken. If there was a picture of me and my siblings and my parents, it was over a span of a few photos. We never officially gathered together and did a
Mm-hmm.
family photo. That's
Yeah.
just not something we did. So that for me, I wanted to be able to give that to other people. I
Yeah.
wanted other people to have that, because maybe that's something I've always wanted for myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's too late now, but it's not too late to do this for someone else.
Yeah.
So working with people and families and watching families grow, like that was the highlight of everything. I love seeing that, and just the joy of being together. And things are so busy now, and people have big kids and little kids, and there's so many different things going on. Just sitting together for an hour and being one and remembering that connection, that's where the cream is right there.
And so when I definitely agree with that because that's why I come to you for pictures because we didn't have that growing up, and I think it's important to capture those moments. Now, like when you first started photographing families, how did you get people to photograph? Like, how did you even get clients?
I um I used to be super 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 timid, shy. I would never approach a stranger. That was just not my thing. Um, I I was put in this position of, do I want to make this happen or do I not? Do I want to continue being shy and hope that someone approaches me, or do I step out of my comfort zone and do it myself?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. I approached a family at a park and just started talking to them about, the meaning of a family photo, and is this something you wanted to do? And that was scary for me. I
Wow.
got a lot of rejections. I got a lot of no thank you, not interested, like I was being treated like I was one of those like people asking for money on the corner of a street.
Yeah.
It was really hard, and it left me in tears, it left me in shame, and I'm like, I don't know what else I need to do, but I kind of just kept going with it. And every time I kept thinking, I'm like, maybe this is my fail. Maybe I need to fail so many times before I finally get a yes. And eventually I did get a yes. Someone was like, that's a great idea. How do we sign up? And I'm like, I was scared. I didn't know how to get them to sign up because I didn't expect to get a yes. So that's kind of when I started putting things into play as far as like, how do I take it to the next step? But yeah, definitely stepping out of my comfort zone was the hardest thing to overcome.
No, I'm really glad that you're bringing that up because one, I would never guess you were shy. I met you at a time that you weren't,
Yes.
but knowing that you kept going for that rejection, and I can
Yeah.
only imagine how that must have been. So that's exciting. So then you started taking photos in your house,
Yeah.
and then you grew to now having a storefront studio. How did that transition go? Was that scary knowing that, and being in this business, I'm assuming that you always have to make sure that you're doing well to keep going.
Correct. Yeah.
So how did that transition go to?
Oh my gosh. Well, that was like let's see. I'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary of being in business in January.
Awesome.
So that pretty much was like a 7 to 8 year transition.
Yeah.
Um, Before I'd met you, super shy, only did outdoor stuff, only worked with families. I did some elopements, some brides and grooms, really small wedding coverage. And when those people started having children, they started coming back to me and asking me to photograph their babies. And then that's when the whole working out of my
Mm.
home studio came into play. Like I needed to make a space that was comfortable, that could work for what we needed to get done for picture wise. Um, that proved to be successful, and I just kind of went along with it. So instead of trading outdoor for studio, I did both. I accommodated still my outdoor families and my studio stuff. And that was a good couple years before I was feeling like I was doing something right. For the
Mm.
first year, I think I maybe had 3 clients. I took business courses through the Coachella Valley Women's Business Center, made a business plan, set my goals, and just put everything into play. And things started happening. Work was coming in. I changed how I communicated with social media, and it just kind of took off with momentum after that. So once the studio part started happening, I kind of kept rolling with it. And I think one of the biggest things that I had to do was keep up with the trends. I had to keep growing, I had to keep
Mhm.
learning, and what people were doing that they thought was really awesome, I jumped on that bandwagon and started doing those things too. So then that helped. And eventually I got to a point where I felt consistent with the amount of work that was coming in. And then, when I get to a point where I'm feeling comfortable, I don't like that because then I feel
Mm.
like I stop growing.
Yeah, that's great.
And I remember saying, I'm too comfortable. I need something to shake things up. I need to stir the pot a little bit, take myself out of that comfort zone and start getting nervous about, am I going to make my bills next month? Am I going to be able to afford taking a vacation or whatever? So I started considering opening up a storefront.
Okay.
And that was not going great. Things were really out of my budget, either too big of a space, too a location that wasn't going to work, too much money, things like that. Or maybe, the space was perfect, but it just had too much work to do, and it was just not feasible as far as doing that kind of a budget. So I paused, I stopped the looking, and I said, I think maybe it's just the wrong time. And it was stressful. I was getting bent out of shape about it, and I was getting frustrated, and not to the point where I wanted to quit. I just needed a break.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just needed to refresh and just focus on my work a little bit more, and maybe something magical will happen. Um, then I came to Dairy Queen, which happens to be my neighbor here, and
Best place ever.
I can't have Dairy Queen because my body does not like me to have dairy. But I told my husband one night, I'm like, let's just go. And he's telling me, you're not going to be happy about it. I'm like, I don't care. I just want to have ice cream. And we did. We came to Dairy Queen. We sat out on the patio. And while we were sitting there, we saw the place right next door to Dairy Queen was available. And we looked in the window. There was things in there. There were dead lizards and just trash and stuff. Like, it was in bad shape. And we got this idea of, calling and making an offer. We'll clean it up and make it our own. And they came back with a better offer, and they're going to fix this all up for me and do it however I want it to planned out. And that's the rest is history.
And I really like a couple things you mentioned earlier. One was, you mentioned going and getting some business classes. And
Yes.
I think a lot of people won't take that extra step because, you have an idea
Mm-hmm.
and it could be a great idea, but if you don't have the right resources or tools or know how to go about it, you can get stuck.
Yes.
So you were, what made you go get those business courses?
First of all, the lack of knowledge for business in general. I had no business knowledge. My background was not meant to be, I was not meant to be a business person. I was not meant to be an entrepreneur. That was just not in the cards for me. And when I was thinking, how am I going to use photography to make money? That was a business idea. That was not a photography idea. And I'm over here Googling how to write a business plan, and there's hundreds of things that came up, and it was so overwhelming. I'm like, it can't be this difficult. My mission statement, when I went off of Google, was 3 pages long.
Oh, wow.
Like, I don't think that's right. I don't think it's supposed to be that long. But I did find that's how I found the Women's Business Center, was just looking for more local results. I was looking for classes, and they had everything lined out in there as far as taking your idea and actually seeing if you're feasible and being successful with it. And that's what I needed. They didn't really care what my idea was. They just needed to know that I had the will to do this and the time to commit.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the passion about it.
Yeah.
You have to be passionate about it, because if you're not going to be all in to making your business successful, it's not going to be successful.
That's very true. Then you also mentioned another thing that was surprising, that you don't like being comfortable, right? Like when you get too comfortable, you need to change it up. What drives you for that? Like, why is that? Most people would just be like, I'm good. I'm doing,
yeah,
well enough. I'm gonna keep it this way.
yeah. I'm a big dreamer. I didn't have a lot when I was growing up. I was never meant to travel. I was never meant to have a nice car. I was never meant to have a nice home. That was just not for me. Like, my background, we were very poor. Um, but I've always, even as a kid, I had always wanted more. I had wanted nice things. I wanted new clothes. I wanted a bicycle. Well, now it's not a bicycle. Now it's, motorcycles and trips and going to Bora Bora or whatever it is. Now the dream is just bigger. And I set goals for myself. So I always keep my eye on that goal. And maybe it's just because I'm never satisfied. Even though I'm incredibly happy with where I'm at now and what I'm doing now, there's always just something else to be had out there. And I think if I just keep extending that, then I keep pushing myself for more.
No,
and that just means, more business, more fun, and more work for everybody else.
And for those of you listening, when she does photos, you're traveling for a lot of these weddings or even family pictures. People are now calling you to go to their location and not locally.
Yes.
And how did that even come about? Like going beyond
beyond
local,
our little Coachella Valley here. I maintain connections with people that I've met along the way. And remember, I used to be a super shy person, but when I get to know someone, they're like family to me, because I've put enough trust in them to open up, and I keep reaching back. So it's my job's taken me to some pretty awesome places. I've been to Baltimore. I was just in Seattle in August for a wedding from a friend that I've grown up with at my very, very first job. The first job that I attribute to taking me out of my shell, and making me more of an outgoing person. So it's just those little connections like that, and then letting people know that I'm there for them no matter what. And once you find someone that you trust, you don't want to let go of that person.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Now, you mentioned that, when you were looking for a storefront, it got a little overwhelming, so you took a break. Not that you gave up on it.
Right.
How do you deal with obstacles along the way in this business? What continues you to get over those humps?
Uh, I do a lot of thinking. I'm never a knee jerk reaction decider. I contemplate a lot. And sometimes it's just a risk that I'm willing to take. And I weigh what's the pros and the cons. I weigh how big the pros are, how big the cons are. And sometimes you just never know. So when I um, took this place as my storefront, I got nervous. I'm like, okay, I'm comfortable. I know I can pay X amount of money for rent and bills every month, but what does that leave me? So I'm, crunching the numbers that way. And I thought, okay, if that's going to be my baseline, how much more work is this going to bring me in? That was a huge mystery. I had no idea. I'd never owned a storefront. I'm on one of the busiest streets in the valley, but, not having any sort of experience, I had no idea if it was going to be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, it really is about just taking the risk and not playing it safe.
No, that's incredible, and that's great advice.
It can be scary for sure. I mean, I've had a lot of scary moments in here, but just working through problems and take them as they come and think about the future and what it can be and just keep playing with it. And eventually, if you, like I said, you have to be passionate about solving problems, and eventually your results are going to come out of that.
And the last thing I want to mention is you talk about adapting all the time with trends.
Yes.
And I think that's so important because a lot of times when people feel they have a good product, they don't why adjust it if it's working. So what makes you continue to transition and keep yourself going towards those trends?
There's a lot of photographers. I mean, there's even non-professionals. So we're always competing with the latest phones that come out with these really awesome cameras, or people that we inspire that they get their own camera and think they're going to do their own family photos.
Mm-hmm.
But when they realize how much effort you have to put into even making a photo shoot in general, that's when they kind of realize that the money that they're spending is going to be worth it to let someone else deal with the setup and the cleanup and the designing and the putting together and the breakdown.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of also providing that service, but providing something that people want, something different, something fresh, unique. Our style here, we're very, very colorful. We like our vivid, bright colors, and one of the trends right now, and that actually hasn't died down surprisingly, is the dark and moody trend. That's actually something we never went with. We've stayed colorful, vivid, bright, and I feel like there's less of us about that style out here right now than there are of the dark and moody style.
Gotcha.
So still realizing what the trends are, but still keeping us separated from that and standing out from the crowd.
I mean, that's what I love, all the different trends you have, because it makes my house pop out when, when I do the photos. Well, I loved hearing your story, and I think it's so important because, coming from nothing to something and still seeing that vision. You mentioned that, it just wasn't in your cards to have these things. And so for some reason you were able to still keep that vision and move forward. And I think it's really important for people to hear that, especially because you're in an industry that you really don't know what tomorrow holds, but yet you're still making it happen.
Yeah.
Is there any last words of wisdom you would like for anyone who's thinking of just not even just photography, but just going out of that comfort zone and starting a business that is that you're your own boss?
Yeah. I will say, first of all, being my own boss is literally the most rewarding thing about all of this. I get to do things that that I've always wanted to do, and I get to help grow. I have employees. We get to help, make that image and make that passion just expand even more, and they're passionate about what they do here as well. But knowing how rewarding all of this is, it really is a scary first leap. And you have to be prepared for things to not go your way. They will not go your way, especially early on in the beginning. But if you're a good problem solver, step back and think about it and work through the problem. Don't just give up. um, I think anybody can be successful. And what I like to tell people is I'm actually more of an entrepreneur, and I only use photography as the tool.
Mm,
You can literally do
powerful.
this for with any other tool, any other business idea that you have, um, as long as you've got that passion and drive to keep going forward no matter what.
That's incredible. That's awesome. That's great advice. So, as you all hear, if you have any questions, please feel free to send an email or message to plainitsafe000@gmail.com. I appreciate your time. Please feel free to share Sonia's story, like,
Thank
share, and
you.
subscribe. And we just want to make sure that we can continue on and inspire people going into business, inspire women going into
Yes,
business,
definitely.
and it's just incredible to keep that story going. So
Yes.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was
Yes.
such an awesome experience.
I thank you. I'm glad. See, we go working with each other.
Yes.
Thank you, Sonia.